Good evening, everyone. My name is Albert, and this is VlogsBoutNothin. Thank you very much for watching my show. I really appreciate it. We're nearing 650 videos for the calendar year. Not to mention that we really didn't start at the beginning of the calendar year, not by any stretch of the imagination. So, every small step forward is just one step closer to our ultimate goal, right? Which is being in absolutely every American home, on some device being consumed, and all while yours truly is providing that entertainment. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that, I know that I want to do that. I seek to do that. And based on the voice and the whole sort of, going with the one take kind of a thing, I feel like we have something going real strong for us here. So let's build on that. So I hope that you guys are well. Truly, I do. Tonight, it's tough. Every single night, not getting on camera and creating the content or doing the improv speeches, but sometimes, I mean, I'm a normal human being for all intents and purposes. I don't entirely like to revolve my life around talking about all of the bad things that are going on in the world. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, that's no joke. I mean, I'm selling it as such, but it really isn't. And it really isn't laughable, but it's come so full circle that the only kind of thing I find as a logical defense or response to sort of all the things that are so bad that happen on the daily, I use humor. And I find that it's a way to communicate. And, I just hope that I'm able to entertain you in the kind of way that I would like. You feel me? And that's just in the kind of super authentic, more than to my detriment kind of a way sometimes. Because ultimately, I have no products to sell. I'm not interested in selling you any products. I'm only here to solicit myself. That's all I got going for me. It's all I can offer you as a viewer, so far as like my sort of real genuine offer to sort of just accept some real life human company and to laugh at me because I laugh at myself so much that I just feel like without laughter, life would be so boring and dull. And it would be real bad, bad experience. And so I preface the program because it's sort of like, again, we talk about a lot of deep stuff here, you feel me? But, I just hope that I sell and what I'm trying to convey properly and not like some serious topics sprinkled with a little bit of Salt Bay humor, never hurt anybody, kind of get us to start talking about things that may be difficult to talk about, but nonetheless should be talked about and in a real way, you feel me? By a real person who really has no agenda at all whatsoever. I mean, I got some current short term goals in my life right now that would pale in comparison to some that I'm sure that you guys have out there. So far as I set my bar real low, I'm not looking to be disappointed in my life anymore. But regardless, the show, is kind of just that way. So if you're new to the program or if you're catching this video at some point in the future, I welcome you with open arms. It's a very inclusive channel, and it will be forever. And, that's kind of what we got going for us. I mean, my goal was to build a huge catalog of content, and I think so far we've really at least got halfway there. So I'm very excited about that. What I'm not excited about is talking about things that are heavy-handed, and that's when I go back to the whole I'm a human being kind of a thing, and sometimes it's easy to joke about things that are real difficult to talk about because it's sometimes the only way that communicators or presentators or whatever, I know that's probably not a word, but you see it's hard. It can be difficult because again, ultimately I'm a part of the problem, and so are you at home, and so is all of our friends and our family. I mean, and how do we take that and move forward and actually build towards a better positive world? It's difficult at best because I think ultimately we have to admit that we all play a really small part in the larger part of what makes the world such a terrible place. And I think ultimately, we have to address this issue because, I'm not trying to be as grumpy as every boomer I've ever met. I don't want a future of perpetual hate and animosity. I mean, I'm looking forward to doing nothing in peace, with friendly people and people that aren't, so filled with just an unsatiable desire to see others fall, regardless of whatever that reason may be. I'm not interested in it. So, with that being said, let's talk about Ukraine and let's talk about Yemen just a little bit, right? Because, again, it's taken us 5 minutes to get into the content, but that's just something that I choose as a speaker to sort of softly go through because, again, what don't we need to be reminded of already as it concerns warfare and terrible stuff that goes on throughout the world while we're more concerned with whether or not we're going to purchase Starbucks. I mean, the ideals are very, very different, I mean, arguably one of us are living a world and a life, and so many of us around the world are trying to survive and question, what they're doing here to begin with. And that's tough at best. It's tough to examine these kinds of interpersonal feelings that we can only imagine from an outside perspective. And, without being disrespectful, trying to, really try to help while not, being an even greater part of the problem. So, Yemen and Ukraine. Yemen is interesting in that it's currently, a highly volatile place as it concerns its own sovereignty within its own borders, and its effect that it has on the local population is far beyond anything any Westerner can, sort of even speak about publicly, I think, just because their totalitarian approach to dictators and to rival governments and other historically hot spots as it concerns borderlines and arbitrary borders nonetheless. War is a sad state of affairs. It's really not worth it economically, and the toll that it takes on the human population far outweighs any sort of real tangible benefit that a made up fake economy can provide via the unaliving of so many other sentient beings that at some point it really does become ridiculous to even sort of like justify in any kind of a way, whether it's the freedom to practice your religion or the exploitation of migrant populations to do your local work. Evil is evil. Being wrong is being wrong. Things that were wrong 100 years ago are still wrong today. Things that are wrong today will be wrong 100 years from now. I think ultimately it's up to us as a collection of people to really prioritize what we think is important, and things like the conflict in Yemen, things like the conflict in Ukraine, these are, just sort of little bullet points on what is clearly a more bleak picture than we could possibly begin to paint as it concerns the Middle East and Africa and Israel and the recognition of, sovereign populations and the granting of unalienable human rights that are, in fact, upended on the daily by governments who have agreed to not do these very things that we currently see like passive news every single night on our devices. And so, the thing is we got to educate ourselves a little bit more about things that make us uncomfortable. And some of those things are places like Yemen and Ukraine. And really beginning to understand, or trying to understand as best we can from an outside perspective, what we can do to best assist or desist any kind of aid or diplomatic talks that may or may not take place as a result of other governments choosing or not choosing to adhere to things that we want them to. I think as, like the leaders of the free world, it is ultimately our responsibility to try and, you motivate and incentivize peace talks through diplomacy, because it really is in fact about peace through diplomacy and not the exploitation through warfare. I really feel like the first is a way better alternative to the latter. I think time will tell, but ultimately, hopefully, people will make the right decisions, and they will, try to make decisions that best impact the local populations that are currently in conflict without making things worse, also while simultaneously trying to make the lives better for the very people that suffer as no result of their own doing. And namely, I speak of the population in Yemen as well as the local population in Ukraine. These are actual human beings. They're not expendable objects that, are going to refresh in our games. This is not a game. It's actually real life, and it's really important that Americans speak on behalf of those who don't have a voice. And currently, there are so many people all over the world that don't have a voice that, maybe we should all be making 45 minutes of content here on YouTube to try and convey our message, which is ultimately things must change. And things ultimately will only change if we have these conversations and we educate ourselves about uncomfortable topics. So I get it, I'm not the guy, I'm so sorry, not sorry, as it concerns, talking about some of these things that we do here on the channel. I can't have regrets, as a creator and as an improvisational speaker, moreover, I have to be really clear every single time I speak about how I feel. And while I'm never ever 100% right, I feel like my feelings about things are harder to change even when presented with new information, because ultimately, I just think that violence isn't the answer, and that it just impacts people that have nothing to do with conflict more than it can possibly be ever determined by any sort of system that places value on these kinds of things that have no measurable value, because they are in fact priceless. Human life is a priceless thing, and it does have no actual price, and it shouldn't, because it's that special. This experience is kind of a joy, and it can also be a nightmare, and unfortunately it's a nightmare for so many more people than it is an enjoyable sort of REM cycle of experience. I hope that you guys have a really good night. Thank you for watching my channel, and I really appreciate you guys, alright? Bye!